ISO Masterclass week. Standards After Dark. I go by the names of Paul Chana, an HSC specialist. And with me right here, you've heard from our organizer, Mr. Ronald Bete, a QHSSE expert. And today we are happy to welcome a profession by the names of Mary Goretti Akello. Mary Goretti Akello is going to take us through the engine. Yesterday, Dennis took us through the brain, and now, as I mentioned to the team that was yesterday, we always advise us, please move with your heart when you're going to move with your brain when you're going to use your heart. So today we are looking at the heart or the engine. Day 3, clause 7. Our facilitator, as mentioned, has above 15 years experience. Akello Mary Goretti is an expert, a lead auditor, and she also has experience in working with ISO 9001, 45001, and 14001. We have had an interaction with her, and we are confident that she's going to present you the best explanation of the engine. I request you give her your most attention. Those who are in the chat, please continue the engagement. If something is not clear, you can go right there and put in your questions. At the end of the session, we shall have a Q&A.
Okay. A very good evening to everyone. So excited. Thank you so much, Paul, for the opening remarks. Thank you so much, Ronald, for organizing this important session for all of us to learn from. And then thanks to all the previous presenters or the facilitators, that is Gladys and Dennis, for setting the bar very high for us. So in other words, the rest of us that have to facilitate have to do either better or do like Dennis and Gladys have done. So yes, I as I make an introduction is today, of course, being the third day of the ISO Masterclass. It's a day that we are supposed to look at clause 7, which is support. And I'll be your facilitator. I'm a lead auditor in this, in the 3 standards. And I have done most especially the implementation bit of it. And so, yeah, I know both implementation and the auditing part of it. Here, as introduced already by Paul, yes, I have over 15 years of experience in QHSC. And my experience has been, I have a lot of experience in construction. And then I have part of it in industrial operations. I've been in dams. I have been in roads, but all these are still under construction, hydraulic works. And then I have done transport and logistics for oil and gas, who were the first people in the exploration phase in oil and gas. And QHS is actually more than a profession. For me, I find it as a commitment, and it's a commitment to ensuring that people are safe. It's a commitment to ensuring that the environment is protected, and we do not have any sort of pollution to reach. And with that, the main aim is actually to enable operational excellence in terms of for all organizations. So today's objectives are going to be focusing on interpreting the intent and requirement of clause 7, which is support. And then in the same spirit, we shall be looking at how we can apply clause 7. And then the other objective will be for us to be able to recognize the documented information that is required. And then the last objective will be for us to be able to identify the objective evidence and the non-conformities that auditors seek for. And with that, I think will be good to understand clause 7. However, before we go into today's focus of clause 7, I want to take us back to what the previous facilitators have done before for us to be able to catch up, because I saw in the comment section that there are people that are attending today for the first time. So we don't want to leave out anyone. And with that, we start with recapping on clause 4, which was done on day 1 by Gladys, who did it very wonderfully. So clause 1 is talks about the context of the organization. And when you talk about the context of the organization, you're referring to the fact that where are you as an organization? Yeah. And when you say where are you as an organization, you're looking at what are those internal and external issues that affect businesses. And then two, you're looking at what are those expectations of the interested parties. These interested parties range from customers, suppliers, regulators, shareholders, and importantly, employees, who are usually the internal interested parties. And then still in clause 4, there is the aspect of scope of the integrated management system. And when you talk of the scope of the integrated management system, what is it that the integrated management system is going to look at? Is it going to look at the operations? Is it going to look at the transportation? Is it going to look, I don't know, depending on the nature of organization it is that you work with. And then the other thing under the context of the organization is the processes needed to achieve the intended results. And when we talk of the processes, specifically ISO 9001 it emphasizes a lot about the process approach. In simple terms, a process would actually be a department. In the past, there was reference to departments which range from operations, from human resources, procurement and logistics, QHSC, among others. So those would be some of the processes that an organization would have in terms of the context of the organization. And then when we go to clause 5, still which was handled on day 1, we look at the leadership. And when we're talking about the leadership, we're looking at, first of all, who is responsible. When we talk of leadership, who is responsible? It emphasizes the need for commitment and accountability through one, establishing a QHSE policy or an IMS policy. If you're talking about various standards or more than one standard, then you're referring to it as an IMS policy. And then 2 is you're trying to align your IMS objectives with those of the business. If your business is growth, if your business is to ensure that you're reducing on what your expenses and increasing on your earnings, then you have to align your objectives to that. And then the other thing under leadership is promoting a culture, usually, of course, a positive culture. It can be a quality culture of ensuring that the products that you're making are of good quality, and of course, you're meeting the expectations of your clients. And then the other one is a responsible culture in terms of environment. So in terms of environment, you're looking at things as like prevention of pollution. If you say you have chemicals, and then you're also looking at the safety culture that is going to focus on ensuring that people are safe and you do not have accidents occurring. And then still under leadership, you look at assigning roles and responsibilities and authorities. And there are ways in which the roles and responsibilities can be done, right from recruitment, giving people job descriptions, and then taking them through understanding what exactly is it that they're supposed to do. And there are those that are actually supposed to even have appointment letters for the jobs that they do. And then that was for day 1. Day 1, context of organization and leadership. So yesterday we had Dennis take us through clause 6, and clause 6 is basically about planning. And under planning, there were about 6 aspects looked at. One was being able to identify risks and opportunities, and then it took us through how you can be able to identify the risks and opportunities. This is through what we call SWOT analysis, where you look at the social, the SWOT, where you look at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats. And it's important that you take advantage of the opportunities to turn them into strengths. And then the other aspect under planning what we looked at were the hazards and risks. And of course, there were questions on how do you differentiate between hazards and risks. And Dennis explained all that. How is it that you're able to do a risk matrix? How is it that you come to concluding that with this risk matrix, this risk is high, this risk is low? How do you deal with the residual risk? All that Dennis explained. And then the other aspect under planning is looking at specifically the objectives. You set objectives, and these objectives should be linked to your policy. And when you set the objectives, you should be able to follow up on them. And he talked about something that was just re-echoed before we started the session on making sure that we have smart objectives, objectives that can be specific, objectives that you can measure, objectives that that are achievable, all that, time bound. For instance, you say by this year, by this period of the year, all that was explained yesterday. And with that, he concluded by talking about the action plans that enable one to achieve, that enable an organization to achieve its objectives. And so with that, as you can see from the display on my screen here, all that we were handling was under the planning of the IMS or the integrated management system, whatever you choose, if it is integrated management system or if you want to take on one system, but you are talking about the planning bit of it. And now today we are talking about the implementation. And that is why, if you remember when we talked about, when I was introducing, I talked about clause 7 being the support. However, just to explain to you, why is it that we refer to clause 7 as being the support or the engine? Actually, it is commonly known as an engine as well, because it provides essential resources. When you're starting up a system, you need essential resources, and these resources can range from people. People, for instance, of course, for you to start, you need the HR department, you need the operations team, you need, say, forklift operators, you need truck drivers, you need cleaners. All those are essential resources. But as you do that, it also helps you to be able to get the competent resources to help you run the system. And as you're getting the competent resources, human resources, you don't forget about the fact that you need the infrastructure. For instance, in reference to to prime distributors, you're looking at warehouses, you're looking at offloading bays, you're looking at equipment that are going to be offloading in addition to the forklifts, you're looking at trucks that have to do transportation. All those are part of the resources and infrastructure that you need to be able to empower an entire system. So it's a reason why.
Mary, a quick one. As your slide moved, we are still seeing PDCA. Well,
no, I'm still on the
I don't know if you-
PDC cycle. I'm just trying to explain the engine part of it from planning. And then today we're talking about the doing, which is the support, and the engine. Now, specifically looking at clause 7, we are looking at how is it that we build the foundation for IMS. And as I explained, we are looking at, today we are focusing on ISO 9001, which is the quality management system, ISO 14001, which is the environmental management system, and ISO 45001, which is the the occupational health and safety management system. And with that, you realize that with what I've already explained, you need the resources, you need the competence, you need the awareness, you need communication, and you need documented information to enable you be able to run a good system. So let's dive into the clauses of into the sub-clauses of 7. We look at So we look at clause 7.1, where the requirement is that the organization shall determine and provide resources needed for establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement. This clause is for all the 3 standards. It is the same. The only difference is that for the quality management system, it goes ahead and introduces other subclauses. And these subclauses talk about providing personnel that are necessary for implementation of the system. And as I already explained to you, in the context of prime distributors, who are the personnel that you're looking at providing to ensure that there is effective implementation of the of IMS? You're looking at, one, you need top management, maybe the general manager. You need the operations manager. You need a QHSE person, an IMS person that is going to manage documentation. You're going to need truck drivers. You're going to need operators and all those. So those could be examples of the personnel that you need. Then when you go to clause 7.1.3, still under the quality management system, it talks about determining, providing, and maintaining the necessary infrastructure. But before I go to the infrastructure, what would be the importance of having the personnel or the persons, the human resources? One, you're looking at having adequate personnel and readily available. And why you're doing that is because you want to be able to achieve the set objectives once you have the right personnel. And then when you talk about the infrastructure, like I said, you're looking at infrastructure like warehouses, you're looking at offloading bays, probably the cranes that have to do the offloading. All that is the infrastructure that you need according to ISO 9001. And then clause 7.14 talks about providing and maintaining an environment necessary for operation of processes. And the purpose is to be able to provide or to achieve products and services that are of good quality. Now, when we talk about an environment, the environment may range from a social environment whereby you need people that are stress-free. You need an environment where people are not mentally drained. You need an environment where people do not have burnout, or even if they have it, how is it that the people can be encouraged or can be supported to be able to have a good working environment? Okay. And then when you go to monitoring and measuring resources, you're looking about the equipment that you use for measuring. For instance, in this case, for a warehouse, for prime distributors, one of the common measuring equipments that you would have is, for example, the weighing scales. And once you have the weighing scales, it means these weighing scales have to be, it's not a matter of buying a weighing scale and then having to use it in place. There has to be there's what we call, of course, calibration. Calibration is where an equipment is taken back to, is assessed, or rather is set to limits where it is like testing an equipment, or rather setting it to make sure that its functionality is right. It meets the right standard. It meets what you've set it to do. So that is clause 7.1 and 7.5. Sorry, 7.1.5. And then when you come to 7.1.5.2, it talks about measurement traceability. So still referring, for example, to the weighing scale. Once you have the weighing scale, how is it that you're going to verify that this weighing scale is indeed the right weighing scale, is indeed doing the right thing? It means it has to have what we call a calibration sticker. And then for other items that are packaged, those that need to be transferred, you use the barcodes to read and to be able to have consistent quality of the goods that you have to either transport or to distribute to the clients. And then the last one under clause 7.1, clause 7, yes, clause 7.1 is 7.1.6, which is organizational knowledge. And under organizational knowledge, you're looking at the fact that you have the resources, you have the human resources, but are these people aware? Are the personnel knowledgeable about the organization? In terms of the product that you're making, are they aware about this product? Are they aware about your generally they say your objectives, your KPIs, the key performance indicators, the targets that you set? Are they aware about how the system is supposed to run? For instance, if it's packaging, do we know what we use first? For instance, if it is using boxes, when is it that we put the seals? When is it that we put the barcode readers? All those that is the organizational knowledge that we are talking about under clause 7.16. So with this, the upcoming changes, some have already are already out. Like for ISO 9001, we already have we have it, and it's going to be passed out in September. For 45001, it was passed out in April this year, and for 14001, 14001 was passed out in April this year, and then the 45 will be passed out in 2027. So what are the key changes to clause 7? Here is 9001, and 9001 talks about the need for recognition of digital tools, data management, and technology supporting the quality management system effectiveness. So with this, it means there have to be digital tools. What are the examples of the digital tools that we can have? I would like to hear from people in various sectors. What are the examples of the digital tools? What are the examples of data management systems that we can have, and technology that we have that supports the quality management system? Let's have that in the comment section. And then we will move to the changes in ISO 14001. And one of them is on climate change. And when you're talking about climate change, what are you looking at? You have to be able to, for instance, have a budget in relation to climate change. If, say, it rains, for instance, in Uganda, we have 2 seasons. We have the dry and wet seasons. Do you have the same operational costs? Do you have that same environmental impacts from your activities if it rains or if it is dry? It varies. So you need to have a look at that. And then the other one is maybe during the rain season or during the wet season, you may need to have equipment that are energy efficient. So you need to look at that also in terms of environment. And then issues of biodiversity. There is a lot of keen eye now on biodiversity, which requires you to, for instance, have a biodiversity management program, depending on where your activities are, sensitive ecosystems, and effective technology generally that will be able to help you out on this. And then, still environment, we have the life cycle perspective of thinking, where we had Dennis yesterday explain about the fact that you need to look at from the time you produce the product to its transportation, delivery to the last point, what is your impact on the environment. And at the end of the day, you should be able to come up with mitigation measures, or what we call compensation, for the impact that you create to environment. Now, with that, we will look at specifically the different specifically in prime distributors. Again, I will ask Paul to help me out on the questions. The first one that I asked was, what are those digital tools and data management equipment, rather technologies, that we can have to be able to ensure that we have the right resources and they are running well for the organization?
Hi, Mary. We have someone who was very attentive yesterday,
Okay.
and he says isometrics. I think Dennis had mentioned this. Yes?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, for now, that's it. Friends, you can text some of your other answers into the chat. The digital tools for data management. We have answers coming in. Yes,
Have we
says
heard
Minitab.
of sorry?
Jeffrey says Minitab. Minitab. Okay. Any other answers?
What
Before
about in the
facilitator?
transport sector? What kind of tools do we have, or data management systems are those that we can have in the transport sector?
In the transport sector, we have Google Space from Consulate. There is IVMS, wonderful, from Ocheng. There is GPS, yes, Edwina, and then IMVS, Beatrice.
And then for fuel, in relation to environment, if you want to monitor the fuel consumption and also to see to it that your carbon footprint goes down.
Wonderful.
Yes, there's
For
also
environment, where are the Tilenga attendees? Yes, telematic system.
Yes, there's a
Esther.
telematic system.
There is in-house built applications and compliance charts from Gabriel. There is SAP from Consulate. Yes, any more? Yes, there is air quality monitoring machines.
Monitoring, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
There are scope 1 to 3 carbon management systems from John.
Yes. So that is with focus on the changes that are coming up, because previously we've really been doing manual monitoring of the systems, and now we are going into digital monitoring of of implementation of the international standards. So those are the key changes that we have. And now I am going to thank you so much, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for the contributions. Now I'm going to give us a case study in relation to clause 7, resources. And the scenario here is that Prim Distributors is a company involved in warehousing, distribution, and transportation of consumer goods across Uganda. During a management review, the company noted recurring issues such as delayed deliveries to customers, increased warehouse product damage, and frequent forklift breakdowns, and delays in closing customer complaints. So after that, the management decided to ask the IMS team to carry out investigations. So it was realized after the IMS team did their investigations, or the integrated management team did their investigations, they realized that the organization had only one warehouse supervisor and no safety officer and one forklift operator. What would you advise this company to do with this observation, with this scenario, and then the investigations with the IMS team done? What would you advise the organization to do?
Yes, please put your answers into the chat for your advice.
Do we have any? Paul? Any responses?
We have, I believe they're still typing. There is competency of staff. Consulate said there is recruitment back-to-back personnel from Beatrice.
Okay.
Add more competent staff.
Okay.
From Faith.
Mr. Paul. Mr.
Yes,
Paul,
please.
just help us and add us on the group. Yes, Mr.
Yes,
Paul.
yes. Yes, please. We shall do that.
Yeah, some of us are from the group. Possibly help us. I don't know how we missed it.
All right, thank you. So for those who want to join the group, please just say hello in the chat. We shall send you the link so that we can avoid interrupting the facilitator. However, the link will be shared in the chat and you'll be added. Thank you. Over to you, Mary.
Okay. So yes, as stated, it was realized that there was one warehouse supervisor, no safety officer, and one forklift operator. And of course, with this, it is realized that there was understaffing in the organization, probably looking at cutting costs at the expense of implementation of, or rather at achieving the objective of ensuring that the company or the organization is delivering goods in time, is not having any incidents, and the products that they are producing are good. And so what lessons are learned from this is, one, resources directly, of course, influence the performance of the system, and then people are a critical resource. in terms of implementation of the system. And it's important to invest in infrastructure to prevent losses. As we can see, the products in the warehouse were getting damaged because the infrastructure was damaged. I mean, because the infrastructure probably was old and all that. And then there should be knowledge that needs to be passed on to that should not be in one person and should be passed on to other people. And with this, we go to the second scenario, which was another case study that I would love to share. So prime distributor receives and distributes packaged food products to customers across Uganda. And the warehouse uses a digital weighing scale to verify product quantities before dispatch. During a busy period, the warehouse team continued using the warehouse scale without checking its calibration status. Unknown to the team, the scale was overdue for calibration by 8 months and developed an error of approximately 5 kgs. So what happened is that the customer ordered 1,000 bags. Okay. And when they ordered for 1,000 bags, they expected each bag to weigh 50 kgs. The warehouse used a faulty scale to verify the shipment and dispatched the customer. Upon receiving, the customer conducted their verification and realized or discovered that the bags weighed less than specified. This is what happened. So, if it were you and this happens in your organization, what is it that you would do? What would be the lessons, or rather, what would you fix to be able to ensure that this does not reoccur?
Any advice from the chat? Yes, we have some answers coming in.
Okay.
Yes, attaching calibration stickers. That's from Eric.
Okay.
Jeffrey
That's
says
very
we
good.
schedule for frequent calibration of scales. Or
Mm,
Tim says develop 1-point lesson and train personnel. And Beatrice says always keep track of calibration dates. Thank you, Beatrice. Yes, John
yes.
says increase the frequency of calibration.
Mhm.
And then, Dosit says conduct a root cause. Corrective action may be to have a calibration schedule. Very elaborate. Evelyn says formulating a calibration tracker. There is Joy saying design QC and QA. Yes. Consolate says preventive maintenance program compiled with. Okay. And Joshua says ensure timely weighing scale verification in line with the verification plan. We have John saying regular inspections of machines and calibration. Yes, keep the answers coming. We have create a calibration tracker schedule for machine. Yes, we have, yes, most of the answers related to calibration. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you so much, everyone, for the responses. And from that, we realize that accurate measurements are essential for customer satisfaction from this scenario, and equipment should not be used when the calibration has expired, and traceability provides confidence. Okay. And also calibration records are very important. Someone talked about a calibration register. It's very important. And with that, this would be helpful in resolving such an issue. Now, I have one engagement question. Yes, and the question is, Prime Distributors has competent staff and effective procedures, but its forklifts frequently break down. Delivery trucks are poorly maintained. Can the organization consistently meet the customer requirements? If yes, why? And if not, why? Any responses?
We have some responses.
Yeah,
Okay.
hello,
Consulate is
Mary.
saying no. Downtime.
With
Downtime
any
will be.
explanation?
Yes, Joanna, please take over.
Hello, Mary, we have some responses.
Okay.
Most of the answers say no. Someone says that it will surely fail to meet the customer requirements due to increased lead time, no downtime. Also, the breaking down of the machines, the production would not be that good. So most of them are based on the customer requirements, but we so far have only no as the answers.
And that's the correct answer. And then it takes us to the second question of what is one environmental condition, because we talked about providing a conducive environment or a good environment that enables implementation of the IMS. So what is one example of an environmental condition in a warehouse that, if ignored, could lead to quality issues, environmental impacts, or safety incidents?
Kindly, let's engage on the second question. What is one environmental condition in a warehouse that, if ignored, could lead to quality issues, environmental impacts, or safety incidents? We have forklifts that produce dark smoke, poor housekeeping, leaking warehouse roof, chemical spills, work schedules of workers. We have an answer: spillage again, leaking of oils from machines, poor lighting, leaking roofs, congestion, poorly maintained delivery trucks, disorganized warehouse. Poor stacking, lighting again, uneven floor, oil spillage. Again, we have another oil spillage of chemical spills. We also have an answer to do with air quality due to packaging dust. Collision of the forklift, poor waste management, poor conditioning too again, poor ventilation leading to high temperatures, demotivated sickly staff. Yeah, we also have fluctuating temperatures affect quality of the products. Please keep the engagement coming. We also have blind spots. Don't know if I've gone so fast, but yes, the answers are also coming in very fast.
That is okay. That is okay. So for now, we will take that on and appreciate the feedback. And why I am making these sessions have a lot of case studies and questions is because I want us all to be on the same page and not me to go on explaining without engagement of the audience. Thank you so much, Joanna. Thank you so much, the audience, for the feedback. Keep it coming through. And now we move to close 7.2, unless there are any questions in regards to to close 7.1. We will move to clause 7.2, that is about competence. And for competence, I will start with asking a question: what competence is? Or rather, let me start by explaining it. So competence is, of course, ability for one to apply to have the appropriate knowledge, the skill, training, education, and experience to perform a task effectively. And with that, when you have that, then you're able to achieve the intended results. What does clause 7.2 talk about competence? One, it says it is necessary to have competent people doing work under its control that affects its performance and the ability to meet the obligations of the compliance obligations, which can range from obligations in regards to environment. For instance, we have the NEMA regulations on air pollution. We have NEMA regulations on wastewater release. We have NEMA regulations on the noise and all that. And then the other one that that 7.2 talks about is ensuring that persons are competent on basis of appropriate education, training, or experience. For instance, at prime distributors, what is it that you would look at as competence of a forklift operator? What is it that you would look at as competence of, say, the driver, the heavy truck drivers, or the warehouse manager? One, you would have to look at, okay, what's their level of education? Probably if it is an operator, maybe he's either an S6 dropout, S4 dropout, or he has performed a specific, and in addition to that, he has performed a specific training that has had him be issued with a certificate. And in addition to that, some companies have gone ahead and they are strict on the experience. If you have experience that is less than 3, 4, 5 years, you cannot be able to be considered competent for a job. Take the case in scenario, the prime distributors, where we will say, okay, we want only a forklift operator with more than 5 years of experience. And then the other thing that clause 7.2 talks about is being able to determine the training needs associated with the integrated management system. So the training needs will vary. And with that, I'm going to share with you later on how is it that you determine the training needs of an organization, and where applicable, take actions to acquire the necessary competence. For instance, you've already hired employees. You have a 10-year experienced employee that works, say, in logistics, and they do not have the rightful qualifications. Companies are now changing. Probably they had a diploma. A company can decide to help them upgrade to obtain a bachelor's degree, and probably after that obtain professional courses. And a professional course that is going to help them improve on their knowledge. And then you can also have your people go through training, because now trainings are of different kinds. There is not only one type of training that one can have to be able to grow. And with that, I will also share later on. So looking at all the 3 standards, 9001 talks about determining competence and being able to ensure effectiveness and retain evidence of the competence. And when we talk about retaining the evidence of the competence, one, we have people having curriculum vitae, we have training certificates, and those. And then for ISO 14001, it talks about determining competence affecting the environmental performance and compliance obligation. In other words, it's not that anyone can be able to implement environment. So there have to be people that are competent, knowledgeable, trained, and experienced in the implementation of the ISO 14001. And then in regards to 45001, it talks about being able to determine competence affecting the OSH performance and risk controls in place in regards to your organization. Now, what are the key changes in competence? As you know, we are talking about in the new or in the upgrading of the standards. What are the new items or new things that are being put across? Still, we talk about 1, digitalization and data-driven decision making, and then quality culture and continuous improvement. That is for competence, and then for competence under the the 9001. And then under environment, we talk about climate change, biodiversity, and sustainable development. But under the digitalization for competence, we can look at, for instance, in prime distributors, we can look at fleet management systems. We can look at how is it that we are going to be able to monitor the KPIs. What systems can we have in place that will help us to monitor the KPIs? And then there has to be, of course, competence on warehouse management systems that we have in place for prime distributors. And then when we talk of climate change, the competence, we should be able to train our people on climate change. For instance, like I gave a very good example. For Uganda, we are having clearly 2 seasons, one dry, one wet, even though the times are now changing. And then there can also be knowledge on climate resilience. How is it that people can learn about climate resilience? And then biodiversity aspects. That people, for instance, if our warehouse or if our vehicles are passing through sensitive ecosystems, which are like the wetlands or the swamps, how is it that they can be able what they have to have competence on understanding the fact that these ecosystems are fragile, and with the way they move their trucks, with for instance, a truck has broken down, or during transportation, we have an equipment overturning. What is the impact that we can have on the sensitive ecosystem, which is, say, a wetland? And with that, under ISO 45001, now there is emphasis on the need for the competence matrix and then training programs. So the competence matrix is going to help you to be able to identify what skills are those that you require from the people that you are going to employ to do a certain job for you in the organization. And then after that, we will go into other training documents that we may need to have in the prime distributors. So with that, I take us to an example, of when trying to assess for competence, or how is it that you can improve the competence when you are recruiting staff. One is the competence matrix. So for instance, if you're looking at employing a forklift operator, what is it that you're looking out for? Maybe you're looking out for the basic education, like I said, S4, and after S4, a certified training on forklift training. If you're looking out for a driver, probably you're looking out for 3 years of experience. You're looking out for defensive and eco driving trainings. And then if you're looking out for, say, an HR person, you're looking out for their own qualification in terms of the university documents. You're looking out for their knowledge on HR. You're looking out on their knowledge on training management. So all those are some of the things that you can include in your competence matrix, so that at that time you have to recruit the human resources, you have a matrix that you refer to say, okay, this candidate can qualify and the other candidate may not be able to qualify. Then when you have the competence matrix, next what you need to have is the training matrix. So you've done the competence matrix, and for instance, you already have the people. You already have the employees within. So you need to look at what gaps do they have. How is it that you can be able to help them out to improve? Because then, like I've said, technology changes, equipment change, knowledge changes, and the climate is changing. Generally a lot can change, and so with that, you should be able to do what we call identification of the gaps that people may have and do a training matrix. And when you do the training matrix, then you're identifying the different roles. So the managers, the drivers, security guards, what is it that they need the training on? So for instance, if we look at drivers, a driver will need induction. They will need training on the code of ethics. They may need a training on road safety, vehicle inspection, but may not need knowledge on warehouse safety, may not need knowledge on worker tight, and may not need knowledge on on those 3. So that is the way in which you can do what we call a training matrix. It is like a training course against the role of an employee to determine whether they need a training or not. And after that, then now you do the training plan. And now the training plan gives you the time frame, or when is it that the training should be done, what course does one take on, what is the target group? Are they normal employees? Are they new employees? Is it all employees? Is it the operational staff? And then what is the duration of this training? And who will be responsible for the training? So that is the training plan. Now, with this, I bring in another case study. And the case study is meant to engage us more on competence. And in this case study, we're looking at the competence gap. So at Prime Distributors recently, they recruited a warehouse assistant. Due to operational pressure, the employee was assigned to operate a forklift before receiving formal training and certification. Okay. According to the auditor, his observations were that the forklift in operation had no evidence. The forklift was in operation, but there is no evidence of operator certification, no competence assessment record. The supervisor was unable to produce training records, and the employee was performing a safety critical task without demonstrated competence. And with that, the auditor gave them a non-conformity, saying the employee was performing a safety critical task without demonstrated competence. With that, what lessons do we draw from this? One is that competence must be verified, okay? You must be able to verify it with evidences. We talked about evidence of, for instance, training documents. You must be able to attendance forms. You can have the training certificates. You have the training assessment forms. All those can act as the evidences to verify that someone is competent. And then the second thing is that operational pressure should not override safety. So in other words, safety has to move hand in hand with production. And the cause of this non-conformity was because the warehouse assistant, the supervisor of the warehouse, the warehouse assistant assigned a new forklift operator without receiving the formal training. And then the other one is training and certification are essential, and competence assessments must be conducted for different jobs. And with this, I bring on to us an engagement question which says, of the following, which of the following demonstrates competence in an integrated management system? That is ISO 9001, ISO 14001, and ISO 45001 with objectives of A, B, C, D. What's the answer? Joanna, Paul, or Ronald, please?
Yeah, we actually have answers C.
Okay. C.
Most of them are saying C.
C. Correct.
Actually, we only have C for now.
Okay. That's good. So yes, competence can be demonstrated through one having the necessary knowledge, skills, training, and ability to apply this effectively on a job. So answer C is the right answer. And with that, I will move on to the next clause unless there are questions from the audience.
We have one question from Peter. What is the difference between training evaluation and assessment?
Okay, so a training assessment is an assessment that is done immediately after a training. So I give an example of, let's say, first aid trainings. So when you've done a first aid training, you are going to do an assessment on what you've been taught about, and you give your responses to that training. And then you can also do an assessment on how you rate the training. For instance, we're doing the training right now, and then you're going to rate how was the organization of the training, how was the trainer, were they audible, how was the training environment. All that is what we can refer to as an assessment. However, the evaluation can be done after a period of time. Say 2 or 3 months, you go back and evaluate the training to know how is it that the people are still able to understand or to remember or to implement what they were trained in the past. Okay, so if assessment is immediate, evaluation is after a period of time.
Oh, thank you so much, Mary. Let me just give in 2 more questions that came in. We have one that says, in a case where there is no proper training process, where do we start?
Okay, so in a case where there is no proper training process, you start with a training process itself, a training procedure. You develop a training procedure based on, because a procedure is going to guide you on what do you do in case you need to have a training. It gives you steps. It's you to state the steps. When do we need to do trainings? What kind of trainings are those that we are going to have for which kind of people? How shall we assess the people that need to be trained? So you start with a procedure, And once you have the procedure, then you can be able to implement the procedure. And the procedure will have aspects of the competence matrices. Matrices. It will have aspects of the training matrices. It will have aspects of the training plans. And with that, you'll be able to start on trainings.
Help sheet detailed, your question was answered. One is asking, how do you measure the training plan effectiveness?
Well, so how you measure the effectiveness of the training, the effectiveness of the training plan is you can decide to look at the trainings that you have conducted, that you plan to conduct versus, total trainings that you intended to conduct versus what has been conducted. So once you have a plan and say you had 50 trainings and out of the 50 trainings, only 20 have been implemented, then you can be able to assess that this training plan has been achieved or has not been achieved. That is in regards to the training plan effectiveness. However, there's also the effectiveness of the training itself. So the effectiveness of the training itself is the impact that the training has created to the personnel that have attended the training.
Wow, thank you so much, Mary. I think we can just take on two more. In which instances or scenarios does experience supersede education and training in evaluation of competence?
In which case?
In which instances or scenarios does experience supersede education and training in evaluation of competence?
So one of them is, it's a common one where you have very old employees. An organization has been existing and you already have these employees in the organization. They have the experience, they have the skill, but they do not have the we would say the training or the certification that they require. And yeah, it's a commonest kind of example that you can use. Old serving employees that have the experience, that have the skill, but do not have the training done.
Wow. The last one for now, a number of companies do recruit and throw workers into the job without proper training. What's the best way to handle such scenarios?
Companies employ workers and throw
Many
them.
companies, Many companies do recruit and throw workers into the job, like in the job market or at the workplace without giving them proper training. What's the best way in which we can handle such scenarios?
So the best way is suggesting the different forms of training. The unfortunate bit is that when we talk of training, people look at the class attendance as being the only option for trainings. However, there are various forms of trainings that can be carried out. We have the on-job training, okay? In other words, you have new employees that have been deployed on site. These trainings these employees can be attached to experienced employees on the sites. Then we also have coaching and mentoring. Actually, coaching and mentoring is more of what I'm talking about. On-job training, you're doing the job and helping you to improve. Like you have a supervisor that keeps looking at your work and then helps you to improve on the work that you've done. And then coaching and mentoring, where you have someone that is more superior than you or is more knowledgeable than you, helping you to grow into a better, to attain a better level of understanding of the organization. So there's mentoring. And then you can also have the e-learning courses. For instance, when an organization is there and then your focus says on quality, and people do not know much about the quality management system of the organization. So you can decide to have e-learning trainings whereby you have new employees, and the moment they arrive into the organization, they do the basic e-learning trainings for them to understand. The other one is induction trainings. So you can have employees that are brought on board, inducted, and the induction may not be limited to one day. you can have them inducted. Of course, health and safety would be one of the inductions done. HR inductions would be one of them you can do within one day. But then now the on-job induction may take like 2 weeks, 1 month for an employee to be able to understand what they do. And the other one are the common toolbox talks that we do. This can also be a form of training. So the thing is, we should not be limited to thinking that training is only the classroom kind of training, like the one we're having now, a webinar or classroom. It can be the only environment in which people can learn. You can suggest various ways, or you can have different ways in which certain trainings can be conducted depending on how you do your training matrix. It can guide you on that.
Well, thank you so much, Mary. That has been very insightful. I can see that the attendees are also engaging in the chat. Some are still giving in their points. Yes. So I believe that indeed, as you're taking us through the engine, we are basically being able to get to know about the resources and support. You can proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Joanna. And thank you all for the responses, for the questions. And now we are going to 7.3, which is on awareness. And so, as we talk about awareness, on clause 7.3, it states that the organization shall ensure that persons doing work under the organization controls are aware. And there's emphasis on what the workers should know or the persons should know. And one of them is about the policy, whether it's a quality policy, whether it's an environmental policy or an occupational health and safety policy. The workers or the personnel should be able to understand, okay, what the policy is. It does not end on only understanding the policy, but you should be also able to understand the significant impacts and risks associated with their work. So many times you may find an employee on site, say in the warehouse, and the employee is not aware of what their impacts or what the risks are, that are associated with their work. Okay, so you find, for instance, a forklift operator is moving in the warehouse, and while he's moving the forklift, the forks of the forklift are up and they've not been lowered. Do you think this operator really knows what the risk is with moving the forklift with the forks up and not lowered? Okay. And then the other one is finding employees in the warehouse that are offloading chemicals. And instead of using chemical gloves, they are using, say, the light duty gloves. Do you think this employee knows about the risks associated with their work? Okay, that's a question I leave to you. And then you find again, a truck has broken down and the driver is working on the truck. One, for example, maybe the engine is running, or there is a leakage and the leakage is going direct to the ground. Do you think they understand the impact or risks associated with their work? So with that, it's important that the persons that belong to an organization understand the significant impacts and risks associated with their work. Then the third is that contributions to effective management of the to the effective IMS, including benefits to enhance the performance of IMS, must be known to the personnel. And they should also be able to understand that if they do not achieve conformity, they do not go by what is set as the standard, there are repercussions for this. And these repercussions could be internal, but they can also be compliance obligations. Okay. For instance, you're causing a truck is cruising over a certain speed that is not acceptable for say in a town, and you're cruising over 100 kilometers per hour. Okay, so they should know that there are compliance obligations in regards to that. And with that, when we focus on the three standards, the quality management system, environmental management system, and the occupational health and safety management system, the quality talks about understanding objectives and the consequences of non-conformity, whereas environment talks about the understanding the policy, significant impact aspects and impacts, and objectives and consequences of non-conformity. And then 45 talks about and being aware about the policy, the risks, incidents, and objectives. And with the new changes to the standards, the quality management system talks about the quality culture, and under the quality culture, we can talk about the fact that the personnel should be aware that once a product is not meeting the standard, for example, in the case of bags that are being packed in 50 kilograms, and then an employee realizes that there is one person that keeps not being bothered about how much is supposed to be in this in a certain packaging that we've talked about 50 kilograms, and they should be able to report this so that there is a positive quality culture on reporting on non-conformities that should be promoted. So under the quality management system, there is ethical behavior in terms of course, meeting the expectations of the stakeholder, of the clients, for example. And in this case, I would give an example still similar to the quality of the product. There is a complaint about a product, and then a personnel doesn't give attention to this, ignores it. At the end of the day, it means they are not behaving ethically. And then employee contribution in terms of quality performance. And under environment with awareness, yes, we talked about the kinds of training. So it's important that when we have employees that are taken through trainings that are related to the activities of the organization, in terms of how is it that the activities of an organization affect the environment, affect the ecosystem, the lakes, the rivers, the wetlands, and what are those sustainable objectives that we can have in regards to that. And then we can also for this, we can give an example of truck drivers that are either speeding and not using the right gear, so they end up using a lot of fuel. And when you consume a lot of fuel, you know that you're increasing on your carbon footprint. And if you're increasing on the carbon footprint, then you're affecting the climate eventually. Then I gave an example of steel. Say you have chemicals that you produce. Let me give an example of this. Prime Distributors is producing chemicals. At the end of the day, there are waste products that come from chemical packaging. How is it that these chemical packagings that have chemicals are being disposed of? Are they being openly disposed of with the normal waste, or they are being separated? Those are some of the issues that one can focus on when it comes to change or updating of the standards. And then when we come to raising to the ISO 45005, we are talking about raising awareness and induction materials. So in other words, we should be able to talk about certain things during induction. You're talking about the policy, the hazards, the objectives, and then the right for people to withdraw themselves from danger. I think it's something that is now cutting across organizations to emphasize the fact that it's important for people to draw themselves away when they find themselves in unsafe situations or conditions. So with that, I bring us to a case study in relation to environmental awareness. So Prime Distributors has implemented a waste segregation procedure to support its environmental objectives. During a warehouse inspection, employees are observed disposing all waste into the single container. What is it that you think is the problem when you find such a thing occurring in an organization? Where do you think the gaps come from?
Let's have some engagement in the chat. Yes, we have lack of awareness.
Lack
We
of
have
awareness.
lack of the 5 S's. Let's kindly.
What would lead to the lack of the 5
Paul,
S's?
could you let us know what could be to the lack of the 5 S's? Consulate says label the beans correctly. No labeled beans.
The beans are already labeled, as we can see from this illustration.
So I think Paul talked about meaning the fact that is sort, shine, set in order, standardize and sustain.
Okay.
Then we have one saying when the collected doesn't you get like allows collectors. You've just had I've been able to give an example. Then we have ignorance.
Yes.
Someone says ineffective waste management process. Could elaborate more. Then lack of awareness and consequence for non-adherence.
Yes.
Lack of waste management training.
Okay.
Inadequate trainings about proper waste management and segregation. We also have lack of close supervision. There's one who says, indeed, that's a very big mistake since not all wastes are compatible. Then display of color coding is missing. Practical involvement of the workers is lacking.
Okay.
Lack of awareness and language barrier may be possible. Lack of knowledge about waste management practices.
Okay. Thank you, Joanna. So with that, on interview, it's realized that first of all, the employees cannot explain environmental objectives. So they are not aware about the environmental objectives. 2, they're also not aware about the requirements in terms of waste segregation. And they're not also aware of the impacts of their activities, okay, of the mixing of those. They're not aware of that. And with that, it's a non-conformity because employees are not aware of environmental responsibilities and objectives. What was the objective evidence required to prove otherwise? One is proof that actually employees were trained on environmental awareness. There could also be proof of toolbox talk, attendance sheets, and then there could be proof of communication or awareness about the environmental policy and the waste management procedure. There should be a waste management procedure. And with that, then it would be a different finding altogether. One engagement question in regarding awareness. Which of the following best demonstrates awareness of the integrated management system with objectives A to D? This one is quite an easy one.
Yes, and we have some answers coming in. A is what is coming in. Almost everyone who is engaging in the chat says A, which is reporting incidents and improvement opportunities.
Exactly. So that is very good. With that, I will go to clause 7.4. But maybe before I go to 7.4, because we are left with only 2 clauses, that is 7.4 and 7.5, I will kindly request for a break.
Wow, thank you so much, Mary. Yes, as we get on a break, I encourage us to keep our questions coming in the chat. Please note that the recordings have been shared all through. We had Consulate request for a case dilemma as Mary rests. She's going to come back and work on that. Yes, but let's keep engaging in the chat. Paul, do you have anything for our attendees?
Yes, there's a great package. We've been working on something with Douglas. Douglas, are you still there? And as Douglas comes in, you're all reminded to put in your questions. Remember, today we are focusing on feedback. And as you go through the engine of the clauses, we are going to have more interactive sessions. As you can see, the facilitator is going through and last two sub-clauses, after which we shall have more engagements. Those who did not understand clauses 4 to 7, you can use this opportunity to ask your questions. We shall also have at the end a session where we can allow you to speak out. You raise your hand and speak out. Please, let's follow the housekeeping rules. Do not unmute unless you're called on to by myself or Joanna or even the facilitator. And then we shall have more engagements today. Yes. Douglas,
There's
are you
also
now with
someone who
us?
is actually asking for the recordings. The WhatsApp link is going to be shared to you, the WhatsApp group link. That's for the ISO Masterclass. ISO Masterclass, yes. You'll be able to get all the materials right from Monday to date. But remember, they only shared Monday and Tuesdays. Paul has been able to share that link. Kindly join the group, and the links to the videos will be shared. However, they're also on YouTube, so feel free to be able to check them out and you'll have them. Please note that we're not going to share the slides because the slides are already within the video. So maximize the content that they're giving you within the video so that you can make use of the slide content. Otherwise, we are very happy that you're joining all through. Just keep the engagements coming. You could get up and stretch because our fitness is very important. When we are fit is when we are healthy to be able to carry on with a lot of things. Yes. Thank you. Over to you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Joanna. You know what I was thinking? We have been going through prime distributors and we have been using terms like the brain, terms like the engine, and someone may ask, why are we using these terms? Now, this is it. We are putting it in a form that it is sequential so that the understanding of the clauses is made easier. As one of the facilitators has said, actually, all of them have mentioned that these clauses are aligned. They are related. So on Monday, we actually had clauses 4, 5. That was the foundation. So here, Gladys came in and set in the foundation for the ISO standards. And then on Tuesday, we had the risk and planning. This is clause 6. You're having the brain. So after setting the foundation, Dennis came in and talked about the brain. Now you're bringing all the matter into the system. And then today, Mary is taking it through the engine. Now here you have your brain in place. Now you want to put in the engine, and then tomorrow we are going to have Nation coming in with work. So if you have the engine in place, your brain is set to work. You have a solid foundation. You begin to work, and finally we shall close the ISO Masterclass week with the future. Here is where we shall talk about the evaluation and then the continuous improvement. So for those joining us, the journey is still on. Stay with us. We hope to have more engagements with you today. If nothing is clear yet, please go ahead and ask. We have our facilitators still in the chat. I can see Gladys is already engaging with some of you. And also Dennis is around the corner. Our organizer, Ronald, is around, as well as Mary, our facilitator for today.
Yeah.
And for those who missed, the video links I'll reshare. Those who joined and missed the video links, I'll reshare the WhatsApp link. You can get the videos right in the WhatsApp. We also have platforms, social media platforms such as LinkedIn and YouTube, where you can have more interactions with the facilitators. If you want to also engage further with the facilitators, remember all the facilitators are bringing to you are professionals, are consultants, 15 years experience and plus. These are people who offer services. You can engage them. Their contacts are available. Please go ahead and chat with them and ask them any service you wish to receive.
Thank you so much for allowing me breathe. As I return, we are going to look at two more clauses, sub-clauses under clause 7, and that is 7.4 and 7.5. Back to today's discussion on clause 7. So clause 7.4 talks about communication, and in it there's emphasis on the fact that there is need to implement and maintain processes needed for internal and external communications. And when we talk of internal, we're talking about communication to internal stakeholders who are like the employees, and then external to external stakeholders who vary. They could be contractors, they could be the suppliers, they could be the clients to whom Prime Distributors has to deliver the products that they repackage, or the chemicals from where they get the chemicals that they get for running of the organization. So those could be the external stakeholders to whom the communication has to be given to. And with that, there's need to define clearly what will be communicated, when will it be communicated, and by whom, and how will the communication be done. And how best can this be done is through what we call a communication matrix that I'm going to share with you later on display here. You need to have a communication matrix because a communication matrix is going to help you clearly guide you on what is it that you need to communicate, because it's not that everything that happens in an organization, for instance, should be communicated externally. There's that information that is internal information, and there's information that can be communicated externally. And with that, for internal communication, it could be issues relevant to IMS. It could be communication that enables to employees or other workers to contribute to the improvement of the organization. So for instance, it could be information on how employees can be able to communicate, what they need to communicate in terms of, okay, if it's an unsafe condition, if it's an unsafe situation, how do they communicate it? Who do they communicate it to? Who approves and all that? And the main reason why communication is relevant is because it helps enable employees to understand their responsibilities, and it also encourages employees to participate and feel they are part of the organization. That is for internal communication. And externally, once communication is done effectively, efficiently, then it encourages the stakeholders to have confidence in the organization, because once the organization is free or usually communicate certain aspects expected by the external stakeholders, then they can be trusted by the external stakeholders, and they can be able to get feedback. Because remember, in all the most of the trainings that people do in regards to communication, they talk about the fact that when you do communication, you should be able to give information, but it is complete only when you have feedback. It is not complete if you give communication and there is no feedback. For instance, during this training, I am communicating all throughout, and if there were no responses coming on your side, then it would mean that there is no effective communication happening. So that is the relevance of having communication in the integrated management system. So under the 9001, the changes is one, there is need for transparent and reliable communication with stakeholders and across digital platforms. Okay, when with this new change coming up in September, what are those forms of communication? I would say digital communication platforms that we are having that previously would not really work as evidence of communication, but now in the day-to-day state, they can act as formal communication. Please send your responses through Joanna and through Paul, who can read them out for us. And then in addition to that, when we talk about transparent communication, for instance, if we realize, for instance, in Prime Distributors, they intended to send a certain package to a client, but because of some reasons, say maybe the forklift which was supposed to load broke down, then it's important that the communication is sent through to the client in time, so that the client will be able to have real-time information and not have any problems or have any regrets about using that organization for its products. And then the other thing is when you have the various forms of communication, the digital platforms for communication that I'm waiting for from on your end, it helps employees to be able to get updates instantly. It's a reason why this clause on communication is being updated, because if you're to wait for the ancient or for the olden way of communication, previously we believed it's only letters. You remember before we had telephones, before we had post offices where letters would go, and then I don't know, you wait for what period of time to get feedback. Now we've moved away from that, and now we're on very recent forms of communication that enable real-time communication and not having to wait for physical meetings for people to discuss matters. The other thing is another example I can give in prime distributors is, for instance, a warehouse manager realizing that he's getting short of stock. And with that, he keeps it to himself because he imagines if he communicates it to top management, they're going to complain about the fact that they do not have the finances to be able to restock, or they could take it that he does poor planning for that has made him fail to have enough stock. So with that, if he came out transparently and said, I have run out of stock and I need to restock it, then it's possible that it will enable the system run well, it will enable better planning, and it will enable the the organization to run well, because there is on-time reporting, there is openness, there is transparent communication about what's happening in an organization. And then under 14001 environment, there is the emphasis on the need for consistent internal and external communication about environmental performance and sustainability matters. So some of the information that could be communicated externally in terms of environment could be on the performance of the organization in terms of environmental aspects. For instance, if you know your activities like prime distributors, you have very many equipments that you use, which consume fuel. You have chemicals that you produce or that you repackage, and all these are natural resources, and some of them produce have an effect on the climate. So with that, it means at some point you need to do what we call carbon compensation, whereby you do the calculation of how much is it that you're polluting the environment, and how is it that you're going to be able to compensate for the environment. You could look at things like maybe tree planting. You could look at things like let's talk about tree planting, but also you could have other ways that you can ensure that you're not affecting the environment. For instance, encouraging the employees to do what we call carpooling, sharing of vehicles, so that we have less vehicles on the road and less fuel being consumed. So those are some of the changes on the environmental management system, which is 14001. And then for occupational health and safety, the simplest example I can give is that of reporting of events or incidents in an organization. Okay, so under the update of the standard, there's an emphasis on the need to review communication procedures and reporting processes, because it's been realized that because of the rigid processes or the rigid forms of communication, the workers, employees, or personnel are not able to report unsafe events. So if better communication channels, fast communication channels, of course with verifications, can be established, then it enables easy and fast communication of observations made on, say, in the warehouse or along the movement of trucks in prime distributors, or during offloading of materials. And for that matter, it helps to be able to cut down on accidents that could happen, but also to prevent reoccurrence of incidents that may have occurred due to poor communication channels or procedures that are existent. Okay, and so with that, I bring us to how is it that you can establish proper means of communication. What you may use as an audit evidence is the what we call the communication matrix. So you identify information that needs to be communicated, the purpose, the audience, the means of communication, the frequency, and the responsibility. Who will be communicating what? So for instance, the IMS policy, the purpose is to create awareness and commitment. Who is the audience? The audience is the employees, suppliers, customers, and what will be the means of communication? You can have various means of communications. This can be through notice boards, it can be through induction programs, they can be through emails, company websites, and so on. What is the frequency? Of course, based on the means of communication, you can decide to say annually, or rather when you revise it, because you're not going to have a policy that runs with no time frame. It could be that your internal procedure is that when you have a policy, when there is change in, depending on what your objectives are, depending on the change in regulations that come up, like for instance, the OSH Act that was recently rolled out, the Environmental Act, if it is also updated, then you may need to update your policy. And for that matter, who is responsible for that? It is the managing director, but majorly with the support of the QHSE manager. Another example in prime distributors can be that of customer complaints. What's the purpose of communication about customer complaints? Is because you want to have a corrective action and improvement. Who is the audience? It is the process owners. When Gladys was explaining on day one, we talked about process approach. And with a process approach, there are definitely usually people that have to lead the processes, or in simple terms, for someone that may not understand what a process is, like I said, it would be like a department, okay? But because the standard requires that we should refer to it as a process approach, so we can talk about a process. So for that matter, who is that? It is the process owners, who are the heads of department. And then what is the means of complaint? The means of communication. It will be the complaint forms, email, and and any other communication system you have internally. And the frequency will depend on when is it that you receive the complaints. And who is responsible for this? The customer service manager. Okay. So with that, that is majorly what is expected of us of clause 7.4 on communication. Okay, so with that, I am going to give you a scenario, or rather an engagement question on communication.
Yes, Mary,
Sorry,
as you go to your scenario, there are some answers you could review for the
Okay.
medias of communication. Eric talked about signages.
Mm-hmm.
We have Prudence, who talked about WhatsApp groups, emails,
Yes.
and Zoom.
Uh-huh.
We also had Rose talking about WhatsApp. I don't know if they're asking for the WhatsApp link. Or then Peter talked about the email.
I asked about means of communication that were not previously considered as former means that one could use for communication of IMS, but now with the new updates, it is now okay for us to use those as means of communication. And yes, WhatsApp is one of them.
Yes, so most of the answers we have WhatsApp groups from Nuamanya. Peter, also Rose talks about emails, and Mahad talked about emails. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. So here we have a scenario, a casing scenario, and it is a supplier notifies a procurement manager that a cleaning chemical has been reformulated And now it requires different storage temperatures and updated safety handling instructions. The procurement manager receives the information by email, but does not communicate the changes to the warehouse personnel, drivers, QHSE department, and customer service team. Okay. As a result, because the procurement manager didn't communicate this to those teams, the warehouse staff continue storing the product under old conditions, and the drivers transport the product without awareness of the new handling requirements. So the customers do not receive the updated safety data sheet. Okay. It turns out to be a non-conformity during an audit. And as such, the auditor finds that employees are using obsolete information and that the updated supplier requirements were not communicated to the interested parties. Okay. And with that, what would have been the objective evidence that would have been required by the auditor? One, objective evidence would have been a formal communication procedure. Two, a communication register. Okay. And then acknowledgement of critical communication, and then training employees on communication responsibilities, and finally verifying the communication effectiveness during the audit. So for that matter, it means because there's a communication gap, and this shows the relevance of communication, because then when one person gets information and doesn't communicate it to the rest, the rest of the people do not have knowledge, for example, on the changes that have been made. This is in the case of prime distributors. One person is aware, receives the communication, but does not pass on the communication to the rest of the teams. The next one that I want to use is that of as in a second scenario. Just excuse me. No. Yes. Now, I will engage you in terms of question to know which of the following is a most aspect of effective communication in an integrated management system. And then I will also want to know during communication, when is it that most, let's say either in non-conformities from your end, when is it that non-conformities have been registered? When is it that environmental incidents have occurred, and probably accidents? If there is ineffective communication, it can be either internally or externally, just examples. But first, let's start with a question on display. Which of the following is the most important aspect of effective communication in an integrated management system?
Yeah, so we have a couple of answers in the chat. All of them are stating B. I do
B.
not see anyone else with another answer. Everyone is stating B.
Okay, which is the right response. And with that, I will take us to the next clause. And after that clause, I'm trying to rush it up because I would like to have a question and answer session in the end. And so because of that, we go to the last clause, which is 7.5, documented information. And in documented information, we are looking at clause 7.5.1, which says that documented information, an organization shall include in its documented information information required by its international standard and organization as being effective for the system. So which means it can vary from organization to organization. Okay. And then there is 7 point, and after you've identified according to the international standards, what are those documents that are required of you, then you should be also able to identify what are those documents that are required of you as an organization. So I will go back. For instance, for resources, clause 7.1, what are those documents that are required of an organization in terms of the international standards? Clause 7.1, which is about resources. Can I have an example of the types of documented information required for resources? Examples.
So we can go ahead and type in the chat. We have Julia saying audits. Paul says JDs, that is the job descriptions.
If Paul, we are referring to 7.1. So yes, the job descriptions, correct. Which other one?
Julia say audits. There's audits. I believe he meant audit documents. We also have safe systems of work.
7.1, the resources.
All right. There is calibration records.
Yes, correct.
Organogram.
Yes.
Standard operating procedures.
Yes. And
We
then
have-
what about for infrastructure? What is the documented information that may be required under infrastructure?
We have drawings. Someone says drawings.
Yes.
Others says safe actions implemented attendance register.
Infrastructure.
The safe actions implemented, and then two answers: safe actions implemented, and then attendance register.
Okay.
Uh,
But
we have
that is okay.
Someone says processes.
Yes. The process map.
Others says inspection records for machines.
Yes, correct.
We have flow plan.
Yes.
There's another generalization of plans.
Okay. Depending
They
on
have
which plan.
Yes, there's competence matrices. Compliance
Correct.
register has a lot of answers. Compliance registers,
Yes.
maintenance records, and minutes
Yes.
of meetings.
Mm.
Someone says signages. Signage. All right. We have site plans.
Yes.
And then, we have actually two answers of signage. So you have to correct us if I'm wrong. Mary. We have Daniel says infrastructure gap analysis.
Yes.
There's
It can also
budget.
be.
Yes.
Budget, very correct.
There's equipment master lists.
Yes.
Area map.
Yes.
We have artworks and flowcharts.
Good.
Yeah.
Why I'm referring us back to clause 7.1.2, it's because I want to see if we are flowing well, because then now clause 7.5 is more like the summary of the other clauses, because at the end of the day, you should have what to present to the auditor as evidence. Okay. And that's why in ISO 9001, it asks that you should be able to have to create, to update, maintain, and control documented information. Then 14001 talks about the same. And 45 actually also talks about the same. So in the changes that are up for ISO 9001, the environment management system, it talks about electronic, more explicit consideration for electronic devices, records, cloud systems, data integrity, and data and digital documentation. And why is it that we need these electronic records kept in electronic format and cloud systems? Why is it so? It is because most times in the past, because of the fact that when an auditor comes, we are carrying the hard copy evidences of implementation of a system. What may happen is that over time, the physical files can either get destroyed, they can either get lost, they can, I don't know, they can be manipulated, because it's possible that because one knows that there is an auditor coming, they may decide to manipulate the hard copy documents, which is not the case with soft copy documents. So it's a reason why there is need for electronic records and cloud systems. Okay. And also, if you're to refer, for instance, to occupational health and safety, if you have electronic records, take an example, you had an incident that occurred about 6 months ago. And when this happened 6 months ago, you don't need to go back to the hard copy, say even a year, 5 years ago. You don't have to go back to the hard copy files. You will go through the through the electronic records and easily locate or identify the incident that may have occurred. So with that, you're saving on time, but you're also having the document being secure and information not being altered. Okay. And then under environmental records, there is need for evidence for environmental monitoring. So in other words, for instance, for prime distributors, the evidence that can be asked for is the monitoring on fuel consumption for the trucks. There could also be need for evidence on the life cycle perspective from let's say, production of the material, transportation to delivery. What is it that you have as evidence that you actually have information regarding your follow-up on this? And then there are issues to do with the waste. Because prime distributors does chemicals, it does packaging and all that, it definitely generates waste. So there may be need for examples, for documented information of things like the waste manifests, the transfer forms, the destruction certificates for the wastes that prime distributors has. Okay. And then the other one could be records of when we talk about biodiversity considerations. If, for instance, prime distributors had somewhere they were using as a dumping ground for waste, and it is realized that it is not a good environment for waste disposal, then it can be decided that prime distributors has to do what we call habitat restoration. In other words, to take back the environment or the habitat to its original state. So then it means you may have to have records and evidences of the restoration process from the time that you started using this as a dumping ground to when you had waste accumulated, and then after the restoration of the place. So those can be some of the examples. Still under environment, you could also have records on the emissions of air. You can have records on noise. You can have records, on dust emissions, that your equipment produce. And then energy consumption. We all are keen on this, energy and water. We need umeme to give us the records. Light. We now call it UEDCL light. And then national water. We need the records. Those are the same records that organizations can have as records of monitoring of their environmental aspects. Okay. And with this, of course, I was talking about the changes. So with this, we go to the next clause, which is clause 7.5.2. So 7.5.2 talks about the fact that there has to be creation, updating, identification, and description of a document. And I'm going to show you an example after. And it also talks about the format and the media and review and approval of a document. So in other words, there has to be creation. You create the document, you show it's updating, and then you need to also have it in different formats, in soft copy, in hard copies, but also even when you have it in soft copies, you can decide to have it in Word and then have it in PDF, where you retain the originality of the referencing or the identification of a document. Why do you want to have control of a document in terms of creation and updating? It's because you do not want to have a document in circulation that is not the right document, or rather I would say a document that is obsolete. It should not be in circulation, but because there is no control over which document should be where and at and being used by who, you realize that some employees can end up using an old document instead of a new document, and so for that it would be an audit issue. And then 7.5.3 talks about still control, which is availability, suitability, and protection. And availability is how do people access this document? It could be on a cloud system. It could, a number of companies use what we call Google Workplace or the Google Drive. Others use the Dropbox. Others are using SharePoint. So those can be forms in which prime distributors can have its documents being controlled and available and protected from being manipulated or being used the wrong way. And with that, I want to show you an example of a document that is controlled. So, so usually one, it will have the document number. So for instance, this is Prime Distributors Integrated Management System, Procedure 001. What is its revision? The revision is the number of times you've had to update a document. So the revisions are actually reflected, for instance, down here. So the document was initially created on the 1st of January, 2024. The revision date is this. And it shows you the description, because it's important each time you have to update a document to have the description of the change. So initially, this was a first issue, and who approved it was the general manager. But you can go ahead actually and have someone that developed the document, someone that reviewed it. It's advisable that there are 3 people. One is developing, the other is reviewing, and the third person, who is usually the topmost person, is approving the document. Okay. The development can be done by any member of a team. Say in operations, let's say, okay, in procurement, you have an officer develop the document, you have the procurement manager review it, and then maybe the finance manager approve it, or the operations manager approve it. And then after revision 1, you see it going on to revision 00, the initial release, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can go on and on and on depending on how and when the changes come in, because then you can only update a document if there are any changes that occur, because it's like, I would say, even policies. You see, when you have a document, a policy or a procedure updated, and there's no description of change, there can be a question from an auditor prompting, why is it that there has been change in this document? What occurred that you had to change this document? So it is easy for you to refer to the document and say, this and this happened. Maybe the process of approval was changed for procurement. I don't know what it is, and with approval of the topmost person. So it indicates, of course, the date, the department who has prepared and who has approved it, with the purpose, scope, responsibilities, and document control. Document control and the revision history. So this is how a controlled document looks like. But to notice that you will find signatures. If it is more practical, then there will be signatures as well required for these approvals, because then if there are no signatures, it's possible that someone can just type in the front page, because it's an audit, and attach it to show that the document has been reviewed. And when we talk of document control, what is the other objective evidence that one can use during an audit? or how is it that you can be able to manage your documents? There's what we call a document master list. Okay, that's a document master list. So this document master list, the document master list usually has the document number, so you're able to track all the documents across the processes. It's not just one department. So as you can see, some documents are from QHSE, others are from operations, others are from HR, others from procurement. With the document title, it can be a policy, it can be a procedure, it can be, I don't know, a form. All those can be in the document master list. The department concerned, the revision, the issue date, the date of when you gave the first issue, and the review date. And like I said, the review dates can vary, meaning you would need to add in more columns. And then who is the owner? What's the status? Is it an active document? Is it an obsolete document? And where is it that one can find it in the company portal or in the company system of registration of documents? And now with this, we come to one scenario that I want us to go through. The scenario is a warehouse employee following a printed goods receiving procedure dated 2022, while the latest approval version was revision 4 in 2025, and it's actually available. Okay, so the employee has this, okay, revision 1, whereas there is a revision of 2025. Upon review, the document is not marked as obsolete. And then the employees are unaware of the revised version, and the different departments are using different versions. So you realize that this employee is using version 1, there's an approved version of 2025, but in between, other employees are using different versions of the document. And with this, it's a non-conformity, because then the non-conformity finding is that the obsolete document, the document is obsolete and is being used. Okay? With this, what is it that one would use as objective evidence? I already explained this. One is the master document register, and then the revision history of the document. That would be proof enough to show that the document that you're having is the rightful document, is not obsolete, it's approved, it has gone through the rightful channels of development, of review, of approval, of updating, and all that. And so with that, I have one question, or rather two engagement questions. One is, which of the following is the best reason for controlling documented information within an integrated management system? And then 2, can you name one type of documented information you use in your role in your organization? So we start with question 1. Which of the following is the best reason for controlling documented information within an integrated management system? Any responses?
Believe they are still thinking, and we have some coming
In
up.
fact, I've just given the answers in my closing remarks.
Yeah, so everyone is typing B.
Is typing
B.
B.
B
Yes.
for
So
boy.
B is the correct answer. To ensure employees have access to accurate, current, and approved information when needed. Question 2 is, can you name one type of documented information you use in your role in your organization?
So we have the SOP.
Standard
the
operating
JOP.
procedures.
Yes, there's journey management
Okay.
plan. Is test methods. Or someone
Sorry?
at the top said test methods. Test methods.
Okay. Test methods,
Someone said departmental SOPs. Yes.
which is the same as the first answer.
Key performance indicators and equipment records.
Okay. Follow up
Like,
on that.
yeah, there's documented information we use purchase order forms, incident
Purchase order
investigation,
forms.
project management plan templates.
Yes.
We have another SOPs, another GMP, and then inspection checklist.
Inspection checklists. Yes.
Yeah, and this unspecified fire inspection checklist. There is toolbox talk,
Yes.
risk assessment.
Good. I love the responses. If we may continue, common pitfalls, and the categorization that I've done for the common pitfalls is according to their clauses. So for 7.1, the common pitfall is when management assumes that resources are adequate without assessment. And there can also be insufficient budgets. And because of the insufficient budgets, there could be understaffing. If you refer to the discussion we've just had, or one of the scenarios I gave you, where there is a whole warehouse and then you only have one operation person, no safety person, with one forklift operator. Okay, so the best practice would be to conduct periodic resource reviews and then link resources to the needs. Link resource needs to objectives, okay? And then operational requirements. Then for clause 2, which is on competence, the pitfall is training records exist, but competence is not evaluating. And so relying on attendance sheets, it's something that is very common for many organizations, where people believe that having only attendance sheets is sufficient without without evidence of competence being evaluated. So the best practice is to define competence requirements per role using a competence matrix. And then for clause 7.3, the common pitfall is that employees know the policy, but their specific contribution and consequences are not known to them. How is it that this pitfall can turn out to be a best practice? Is through conducting toolbox talks, campaigns, and then various forms of learnings that I have explained, maybe through mentorships, maybe through coaching, maybe through, I don't know, various ways. Then for clause 7.4, communication not defined in the process, and information is shared inconsistently, as of when one feels like with no communication matrix, you don't know when to communicate what. So the best practice is to have a communication matrix to do, because the communication matrix helps you to know what to communicate, when to communicate, who and how to communicate. And then for documented information, the common pitfall is the use of obsolete documents, and various people using different forms of documents, some people developing their own documents that are not even controlled and putting them into use. And the best practice here is to have, first of all, a document master list, and then to have procedures of how processes function, and have approvals done for a document, like I said, from development to review and approval, because then with that, then it's possible for you to have the rightful documents in circulation. Okay. With that, what are the key takeaways? One is that companies that subscribe to the international standards must comply with all clauses of with all requirements of clause 7 to ensure consistency in running of the system. And then 2 is that competence is important, or rather it's relevant in ensuring that personnel perform their responsibilities, not only QHSE personnel, but across. And then effective communication is very, very relevant in ensuring that people understand their roles and responsibilities, not forgetting what is expected of them. And then under documented information, there must be controlled documentation, and that has to be kept current, accurate, and accessible. And there must be, of course, awareness at all levels, which will help to maintain compliance. And with that, then there's definitely continual monitoring and improvement of the whole IMS system. And with that, I conclude by saying people communication competence and control documents eventually leads to a successful system that can be implemented. As we know, the engine is very important, and without the engine, the clause 7, then it's not possible to have a complete or a successful integrated management system. Thank you all. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Ronald, for giving me this opportunity to share knowledge. And thank you all participants for your active participation. And with this, I'm on to take on questions that may have arisen during or after my presentation. Thank you so much.